Hello dear students, this is your English teacher Qaisar Bashir. In this video, we are gonna read and discuss From I Explain a Few Things, written by a Chilean poet Pablo Neruda. Dear students, we are gonna discuss this poem in the following steps: introduction about the poet and the poem, reading of the poem, stanza-wise explanation of the poem, summary of the poem, and the textual questions of the poem. Let's get started. Pablo Neruda was born in 1904 and died in 1973. He was a Chilean poet, diplomat, and a politician. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1971. The poem is a lamentation on Spanish Civil War in which the noted poets Federico Garcia Lorca and Rafael Alberti were killed. The poet lived in Madrid, Spanish capital, that symbolized prosperity, beauty, and a promising future. But the Civil War destroyed it. Blood spilled everywhere. The poet describes despair and devastation, tyranny and vandalism through the symbols of jackals, bandits, stones, vipers, fire, blood, and bloods. In the end, the poet questions his own attitude by not composing poems about dreams and beauties of his homeland, but he clarifies that how could he do it when there was blood everywhere in the streets of Madrid, the blood of Spain's prosperity, blood of children. There are plenty of symbols and unique phrases in the poem which enrich it. The lines of this poem were quoted by Harold Pinter, the Nobel Prize winner for Drama 2005, in his Nobel lecture. The poem is also a reflection of modern world, which has witnessed umpteen wars and enough bloodshed. The poem is a part of a poem taken from I Explain a Few Things. Let's read the poem. I lived in a quarter in Madrid with bells, with clocks, with trees. From there could be seen the dry face of Castile, like a sea of leather. My house was named the House of the Flowers, because everywhere geraniums exploded. It was a beautiful house with dogs and little children. Explanation. In these lines, the poet says that he was once stationed in a quarter house in Madrid where his companions were church bells, clock towers, and amazingly beautiful trees. From the window of his room, he could see Castile reverberant with life and activity. He says that his house was named the House of Flowers because there were geraniums blooming everywhere. His house was a beautiful house where dogs and little children lived too. Dear students, note, Madrid symbolizes beauty and prosperity. Dear students, the poem begins with a note of hope. Raul, you agree, Rafael. Pedrigo, you agree. Beneath you, the earth. You agree about my house with balconies where the light of June drawn flowers in your mouth, brother. The build of roofs with the cold sun on which the weather vane rise, the fine frenzied ivory of potatoes, tomatoes multiplied down to the sea. Explanation. In these lines, the poet recalls his friends, Raul, Rafael, and Federico, who used to visit his home. They were killed during the Spanish Civil War and are lying buried under the earth. Addressing to them, he says they would agree with what he would say about the house. It was the house with balconies, with the coming of June. Flowers grew as tall as to reach almost the mouth of the speaker. He calls those friends his brothers. Complimenting the roof of the house, he says it looked remarkably beautiful in winter sun. There was a weather vane that looked tired, moving all the time. From the roof of his house, one could also see the rich crops of potatoes and tomatoes extending down to the sea. And one morning all of that burnt, and one morning the bonfires leaped from the earth, devouring beings, and from that moment fire, gunpowder from that moment, and from that moment blood. Thugs with plains and the moors, thugs with signet rings and duchesses, thugs with black friars' blessings, came through the sky to slaughter children, and through the streets the blood of the children flowed easily like the blood of the children. Explanation. In these lines, the poet describes how suddenly the peaceful life of Spain was ruined one morning when a large fire broke out and devoured men and women. From that moment, fire and blood were everywhere. Wild criminals and Moors, aristocratic people and their ladies, friars came in planes. They robbed people and killed them. They killed the children, too many of them. They killed that the streets of Spain were blood drenched. Dear students, in these lines, the poet's mood changed from romantic aspect of life in Spain to dark and devastating nature of life in Spain. Jackals that the jackal would drive away, stones that the dry thistle would bite and spit out, vipers that the vipers would hate. Explanation. In these lines, the poet compares the invaders with jackals, stones, and vipers, symbolizing bad and vicious people, and says such characters would be wiped out by their counterparts only. Opposed to you, I have seen the blood of Spain rise up to drown you in a single wave of pride and knives. General traitors, consider my dead house, consider Spain broken, but from every dead house burning metal flows. In place of flowers, but from every hollow of Spain, Spain rises, but from every dead child rises a gun with eyes, but from every crime or born bloods, they will find you one day in the house of the heart. Explanation. Knowing the political scenario of Spain is a must to understand the poem, as the poet had been there on a diplomatic mission. He expresses how everything got changed overnight after the civil war broke out. He is witness to all the bloodshed and destruction caused by the revolutionaries led by General Francisco Franco, who were blind in their pride. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed, and there was fire and destruction all around. All this filled the poet's heart with pain. However, in spite of all the destruction, the poet expresses hope that the people of Spain will rise up again and have their revenge on these perpetrators of cruelty and bloodshed. You will ask why his poetry has nothing of the earth, of the leaves, of the grand volcanoes of his native country. Come and see the blood through the streets. Come and see the blood through the streets. Come and see the blood through the streets. Explanation. In these lines, the poet says that he has stopped composing poems on the beauty of nature. The theme of his poems have changed. People could ask him why he no longer wrote poems of the earth, of the leaves, and of the great volcanoes of his native country. To all those people, the poet answers, come and see the blood in the streets. Poetic devices. Simile. The dry face of Castile like a sea of leather, like the blood of children. Imagery. Images of peace, flowers, church bells, trees, endless growing of potatoes and tomatoes. Images of war used by the poet in the poem. Bonfire leaping from the earth, devouring human beings. Thugs, Moors, jackals, vipers, and blood of children in the streets. Symbols used by the poet in the poem. Flowers, trees, clocks, bells symbolize love and peace. Jackals, vipers, stones symbolize tyranny, cruelty, and inhumanity. Assessment. What is the title of the poem? Who is the poet? What are the memories that the poet talks about in the poem? Why doesn't the poet write the poetry of sweet dreams? How has the Civil War affected Spain? Explain the journey of the poet from happiness to agony. What is the mood of the poet in the poem? Pick out similes, images, and symbols used by the poet from the poem. Dear students, it is all about the poem from I Explain a Few Things by Pablo Neruda. Thank you for watching the video. I'll meet you with another video. Till then, stay blessed. Khuda Hafiz.